Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video, I'll be reviewing the Hell on Wheels Premium Pack, of which includes the M4A3 HVSS W76mm Sherman, M18 Hellcat, and Skink SPAA. These vehicles are currently 5.7, 6.0, and 5.3 BR respectively, and are a Rank 3 premium lineup in the US Ground Forces tech tree. The pack that it comes in currently costs $34.99 USD when not on sale, and comes with both 10 days of premium account and 1,000 Golden Eagles. With that said, in this video, I'll be going over everything that you need to know about this lineup pack, including its stats, how it plays, I'll give it strengths and weaknesses, I'll give it some scores in several key areas, and then I'll give my final recommendation on if I feel this vehicle is worth purchasing or not. With that said, if you like this kind of video, please consider subscribing, but without further ado, let's get into the review. Now to start, I'll place their stat cards here on the side of the screen. Important things to know are, of course, their armor, armament, and mobility. Now for how this pack plays. As stated before, this pack includes the M4A3 HVSS, W76mm Sherman, M18 Hellcat, and Skink SPAA. This makes for a pack that contains excellent versatility, though somewhat limited survivability. To start, the Sherman is probably the most well-rounded of the bunch, featuring decent, if not somewhat iffy armor, as well as a fairly good cannon, a stabilizer, and overall pretty great mobility. It's basically the most medium a medium tank can be. The M18 Hellcat, however, has negligible armor and excellent speed that even compares with many top-tier light vehicles, which is absolutely crazy. It has the same cannon as the Sherman, but without a stabilizer. Interestingly, the Hell on Wheels Hellcat features a 30 cal LMG on top of the turret, alongside the standard 50 cal HMG, making this version of the Hellcat arguably the best armed, even if just by a minimal amount, of course, without considering the Super Hellcat. Finally, the Skink is a surprisingly well-armored SPAA that's based on the Sherman, but features 4 20mm Poston cannons, of which are magazine fed, with the very slight exception of the premium Hellcat, as it does feature the aforementioned 30 cal LMG. These are all essentially Vismod premium vehicles. They each feature things like wood and structural steel that in theory provide extra armor, but in practice, the actual armor gains are minimal and won't help with stopping shots except for the most borderline of cases. With this all said, the Hellcat being the fastest is an excellent scouter, flanker, and base capper, though it can also snipe in down tiers. The Sherman can kind of frontline, though really only in down tiers, and is better as a second line vehicle, and also you can kind of snipe with it as well. It can also flank in base cap due to its fairly good speed, with the stabilizer assisting with firing accurately on the move up to around 20 km per hour. Otherwise, the Skink being an SPAA is great versus aircraft, and while it has fairly low armor pen values, it can still destroy some lightly armored vehicles from the side and most SPAA, which makes it actually usable outside of just destroying aircraft, though you need to be somewhat lucky in order to not come face to face with a medium or heavy tank. I personally take the Hellcat out first, as it can cap bases quickly and scout early targets, as well as flank to frustrate the enemy early on, switching to the Sherman once the battle lines are a bit more set in stone, and finally using the Skink if I either die with both the Hellcat and Sherman, or if there's a preponderance of enemy aircraft in the sky. Again, with the exception of brawling, this pack has excellent versatility and can fill almost any role. Now with all that said, let's get into its strengths and weaknesses, and first for its strengths. The overall mobility of the vehicles in this pack is very good, if not excellent, with the Hellcat's mobility being amazing and possibly the best around this BR. Heck, even though the Sherman has a good but not great power to weight ratio, it still features the advanced HVSS suspension that helps to even out its ride, providing better mobility overall than it otherwise would have. Second, the Sherman features a stabilizer which allows for firing on the move up to around 20 km per hour, which can be set on your cruise control. This is enormously helpful, especially whilst flanking. Third, the entire pack is actually quite good versus aircraft relative to their respective normal roles, as the Sherman and Hellcat both have 50 cal HMGs on top of their turrets, which is very effective at this BR, while the Hellcat also has a 30 cal LMG that will sometimes do a little extra damage to enemy aircraft. The Skink, on the other hand, is surprisingly good versus aircraft, even relative to similar BR SPAA. As a bonus, each of these weapons can be used somewhat effectively versus lightly armored and unarmored vehicles. For the fourth strength, the turret traverse rates on each of these vehicles is actually really good relative to their class and BR. Beyond this, cannon elevation angles are fairly good for each vehicle. Sixth, each vehicle has 5 crew members, which is fairly good for these types of tanks. For their 7th strengths, reload rates are good for each of these vehicles, though the Hellcat is weaker than the other two vehicles in this pack in terms of reload, it is still pretty decent overall though. And of course, finally, each vehicle features premium RP and SL bonuses. Now for its weaknesses. While it isn't necessary, this pack still lacks a heavy vehicle with a larger cannon and or increased armor. Second, the 76mm cannon is definitely long in the tooth around 6.0 BR, which is where these vehicles are typically going to play, especially if you have the Hellcat in your lineup. This means that you will oftentimes need to know the weak spots of your enemy in order to take advantage of them, especially on heavier vehicles. Third, none of these vehicles have good armor. While the Sherman will occasionally bounce a shot, and the Skink does have decent armor for an SPAA that will largely render strafing runs ineffective, the outright armor of both is still mediocre at this BR. The Hellcat is even worse, as it effectively has paper-thin armor that won't even stop HMGs, and the top of the turret is even open. Fourth, the reverse speed for the Skink and Sherman are terrible at 4.5 and 5.4 kilometers per hour respectively. And finally, the Sherman and the Skink are both fairly tall vehicles and thus are easy to both hit and spot. And now for scores. Because this is a lineup pack with numerous vehicles, I will be giving the average score between each vehicle as the score in each category, thus weighing the Skink slightly less as it is a very niche vehicle with a very specific purpose, of course being SPAA. Additionally, I've added a new category being called Versatility, being that this is a lineup pack. Versatility is essentially how capable the vehicles are insofar as being able to perform in different roles. Now with all that said, for armament I give it a 6.25 out of 10. This is possibly the most difficult category to judge for this group of vehicles, but when you consider everything that they have outside of just their cannon sheer performance, you have a pretty good armament within this pack. The 76mm M1 cannon is middling at best around these BRs in terms of armor pen, as it has 149mm of armor pen at max using the M62 APC-BC shell, and 191mm using the APCR. Still, the M62, which is likely to be your most commonly used shell, has very good post-pen damage, with 64 grams of TNT equivalent inside. Even further, all vehicles in this pack feature good to great reload rates, with the Sherman and Skink being the best and the Hellcat still being fairly decent in this regard. Factor in the stabilizer on the Sherman, the 420mm cannons on the Skink, the numerous MGs on all of these vehicles except of course for the Skink, being that this is an SPAA, with only an LMG port on the front not counting the autocannons, and fairly good turret traverse rates, and you have a surprisingly well-rounded armament relative to BR for each vehicle in this pack, with the Sherman probably being the best mix of features and BR within the pack. Now for mobility, I give this pack a 7.25 out of 10. The mobility contained within this pack is excellent. Heck, I may even be underselling it with a 7.25 out of 10 rating. The Hellcat is the standard bearer for this group, being a 9 out of 10 or even greater by itself, while the Sherman is great in its own right with its good power to weight ratio and excellent HVSS suspension. Mix in the Skink, which is still fairly good considering that it gets a weaker engine and is an SPAA, considering that most armored SPAA are actually quite slow, and you have a group of vehicles that can go anywhere on the map quicker than most other groups of similar type vehicles. Still, a fraction of a point is lost here due to the poor reverse speeds of both the Skink and the Sherman, though the Hellcat at least has a good reverse speed of 25.9 kilometers per hour, which helps to somewhat balance it out. Now for survivability, I give this pack a 3.5 out of 10. The survivability on this pack is bolstered by the Sherman and the Skink, of which don't have very good survivability themselves. In short, while you can take some hits using these vehicles in this pack, they will not allow you to survive very much, especially at the BRs in which you will play. The Hellcat though is in a special class of its own in terms of terrible survivability, and will be destroyed by pretty much everything that it comes across, from strafing aircraft, bomb explosions that are even remotely nearby, HE shells, HMGs, autocannons, regular cannons, and more. The Hellcat is the main culprit dragging this score down, though the other two vehicles aren't great either. If nothing else, at least the Sherman and Skink offer a modicum of survivability relative to the Hellcat, and really you could even look at the Skink as actually being pretty damn well armored relative to other SPAA. Now for versatility, I give this pack a 7.75 out of 10. What can be said for this pack other than that it has outstanding versatility? It features arguably the most versatile tank of World War II in the M4A3 76mm HVSS Sherman, an effective SPAA Sherman variant in the Skink, and an incredibly fast and deadly M18 Hellcat. Though there isn't a vehicle in this pack that can reliably take hits and survive, which limits frontlining and brawling capability and thus takes points away, almost every other role is covered, and covered well. That to me means a ton and goes a long way towards this being a useful and worthwhile pack. Now overall, I give it a 6.5 out of 10. Because these are lighter vehicles that we're talking about, especially with the Hellcat, I'm weighing survivability a bit less than armament and mobility. As such, we get a very good or even great 6.5 out of 10 score for this pack. Insofar as the packs that have been released to date are concerned, the Hell on Wheels pack is likely the most versatile and well balanced, though has competition for being called the best overall. Regardless, with the exception of survivability, which is something that essentially only heavy tanks can afford around this BR, the vehicles in this pack are great overall. They may lack overall firepower, but they have good post-pen damage, the Sherman has a stabilizer, they all have at least HMGs, and they all have at least great mobility. This allows for you to use these vehicles to go after unsuspecting enemies, which helps to minimize the weakness that is the 76mm armor pen at this BR, and even then, its pen really isn't all that bad when you take everything into consideration. Now with all that said, do I recommend the purchase of the Hell on Wheels pack? Yes, I do. This pack, much like the other similar multi-vehicle packs, is a great deal, as it comes with 3 very good and usable premium vehicles, 15 days of premium time, and 1,000 Golden Eagles, all for a relatively decent price, especially while on discount. This sort of pack is especially good for those that want to progress through a tech tree, but aren't all too experienced. Personally, I love this type of pack for exactly that reason, as inexperienced players really need to experience low and mid BRs before they get into top tier, as it will typically be completely destroyed by much more experienced players at, again, top tier, and will struggle with a much different style of gameplay than what is seen at lower BRs. And also, buying a single top tier vehicle will oftentimes cost 2 times as much as getting 3 vehicles in this pack. The Hell on Wheels pack provides a tremendous value in what it offers, and gives great versatility in the vehicles that are given in it, arguably even more so than other similar packs that are currently for sale. Nothing is overtly overpowered, and each vehicle, especially the Sherman, is easy to use and can adapt to many different situations and still do very well. It is for these reasons I give the Hell on Wheels pack both my Tankenstein seal of approval and my full recommendation for purchase. These may be considered fairly boring vehicles by some people, but the pack is a hell of a good deal. Now with that said, thanks so much for watching. If you don't mind, please consider liking this video and commenting on it. Let me know what you guys think of the pack, and if you don't mind, of the review itself. And also, if you don't mind, please consider subscribing if you'd like more stuff like this. But either way, thanks again, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.